Hi, today Team 5 will be presenting the Star Search Simulator application that we developed for Assignment 6 in CS6310 Software Architecture and Design Course. But first, I want to introduce the members in Team 5. They are Khalid Amer, Lazaro Alvarez, Jacob Fijas, MD Khalid Hassan, and Jinan Zhou. So now I am going to begin demonstrating the application. So when the application has startup, we'll be displaying the title page where we have it titled Space Simulator. The application will be starting up at the center of the user's screen and will always be relatively the same size as the user's screen. It is resizable, so you can resize it. It will resize. And so here, when the application first starts, the user can navigate to the top left of the application and open up this drop-down here in the simulation button, where it will display two actions within the drop-down. The first action is open new scenario, and the second action is resume simulation. The open new scenario is as stated. It will allow the user to be able to choose a scenario file and open the simulation and start the new simulation. And the second action, which is the resume simulation, this action will allow the user to go ahead, pick a saved file that they saved previously during a simulation run, and reload it to be able to continue on and pick up where they left off. So for now, we don't have a save file, so we're going to go ahead and open new scenario. So we're going to go ahead here and navigate to this folder. I'm going to pick scenario 0. And let me pause here. Okay, I'm going to go over all the components of this interface. So right here at the top, you are seeing two badges. The left badge is displaying the information of turns. It will be displaying the current turn that the simulation is on over the max amount of possible turns that the simulation can run. And here to the right, it will be displaying the explored spaces information, where it will explore the current amount of spaces that the simulation has already explored. So the amount of spaces the drones have already explored over the max amount of spaces that the drones could explore. So for instance, in this simulation, the drones all started in these three locations. So they have already explored 3 spaces out of the 17 stars that are still left, which adds up to be overall of 20 spaces that can be explored. However, you can't see this first drone here because its first action was a thrust and it crashed into the sun. However, I will go and explain more after I cover the grid. So here in the grid, you do see the amount of stars that are still yet to be explored and the 3 suns that this scenario has started. And here should be a drone 0. But as you guys can see, each drone is labeled with a number at the top right of its icon. And each drone is already pointing at the direction that they're slated. So for example, this drone 1, is pointing at the northeast direction, and drone 2 is pointing at the west direction. And then down below here, it is displaying the information of which drone is currently executing an action. So for example, drone 0 just executed an action of a thrust of 2 spaces. However, it did crash either with this sun or that sun. We don't know yet. We could show you after, but let us continue for now. And the next drone that's up is drone 1. Here, as you guys already seen, this is the panel where we are displaying the information of which action has been executed and the result of that action. So for this instance, it was a thrust of 2 spaces and the result was just a crash. Now we're gonna go down here below, and as you guys saw at the very beginning of this simulation, I did press the middle button, which is our pause and play button. Our play button, if I click on this, will begin to run the simulation at a pace of a frame per every 3 seconds. It is a very nice constant pace where the user can go ahead and see the simulation run on its own and be able to obtain useful information, and it's not fast enough that they could miss some information. So if we go ahead, we can see that the simulation now slowly is updating each turn at a pretty constant pace of 3 seconds per frame. Now, surrounding this play and pause button, to its right, there's the next button, and to its left is the previous buttons. These buttons are it gives the ability to the user to be able to go ahead and say, well, I want to navigate through these frames manually and see these frames one by one. So I can go ahead and click next, and it can go ahead. It's going to update the grid with the next action, where once again another drone thrusted forward 2 spaces and it crashed into a sun. And that was the drone 2, which was facing the west direction, and it crashed to the sun to its west direction. Now, if I go ahead, maybe this was too quick, maybe someone wasn't paying attention, we can go ahead and press the previous button, and as you guys saw, this was exactly what happened. A drone was facing to the west and it crashed into the sun that's facing the west side. We can continue on going all the way back to the beginning of the simulation. This is the initial state of the simulation, and as you guys can see, the drone 0 was facing north and it thrusted forward to the sun and crashed at the very beginning of the simulation. Now, the remaining buttons here to the left and to the right here are our fast forward and our fast backward buttons. Here it is essentially the same as the play button. However, it is going at a faster pace. So instead of it being 1 frame per every 3 seconds, these buttons are going to run the simulation either forward or backwards at a pace of a frame per second. So if we go ahead and click on the fast forward, we are going to see the actions updating a lot faster. And now we have reached the end of this simulation where we have seen the simulation run at its fullest. So it's met the max amount of turns without exploring everything. And it does inform the user they can click next to see the final report, or they can step backwards to see previous actions. And so we would like to show also that the fast backward works and it goes at the same pace as the fast forward. There you go, very fast. So then let's go all the way to the end of the simulation and go ahead and press next here. All right, so once we press next, as is stated in the information box, we are going to be introduced with the final report. This frame right here will be displaying all the useful information as a final report of what size the space region was, number of stars that were in the region, which as I stated earlier was 17 stars, how many spaces were explored. So at the end of the simulation, only 4 spaces were explored, and how many completed turns that did it take for the simulation, and it was a complete 3 turns that it took. Down here below, we have 2 buttons. The left button is our home button, where it's going to navigate us back to our home page, where we can once again restart a brand new scenario or resume a simulation that we have saved. Now to our right is a save button. However, this button is very useful because it will save our final report. However, it's not only going to save the information that we're seeing here, but it's also going to save all the actions of each drone that they executed and the results of those actions. So we're going to go ahead, click here, and save the results of the final simulation and save. And if we go ahead here and go to the folder where I saved it, here's the results, CSV. My window has the default of Excel opening for CSV files. And as you guys can see, we have compiled all the actions and their results. So the first action was a thrust forward, and drone 0 crashed. And the second action was a drone 1 steering south, and no confirmation of that result, and so on and so forth. And right at the end, you can see what the final report of our application was showing, which was the size of the space region, the number of stars in the region, the amount of explored spaces that the drones were able to explore, and finally the complete turns that it took for this simulation. So now we're going to now show the saving capability. So we're going to go ahead and open a different scenario. We're going to pause here. It's a bigger scenario, as you guys can see here. It's over 100 max turns that we can execute in this simulation, or it reaches exploring all the spaces, then the simulation will end. Or if the drones crash, which they can because there's no suns in the grid, the simulation will end as well. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. I'm going to let it fast forward to around 10 full completed turns before I pause this. All right, we've reached 10 full completed turns, and as you guys can see, drone 1 is facing north and drone 1 is facing northeast. So a small caveat of our saving functionality, it is going to save the furthest point of where the simulation ran. So for example, this is the furthest point that our simulation has ran at this state. So if the user would navigate back a little bit and to turn 7 and save here, it is not going to save this state, but it's going to save the state that we were in previously at a full 10 turns. So I'm going to go ahead, save it in my folder of the one I want, save it here, and as you guys remember, drone 0 was facing north and drone 1 was facing northeast. I'm going to close our application, and I'm going to run it again by just using my IDE to launch our application. And I'm going to click on resume simulation. Here I'm going to go navigate to where I saved this file. And as you guys can see here, the file does save with a star search title and a timestamp appended to it. This will help users to be able to differentiate between different save files of different dates. So if we go ahead and open this, as you guys see here, the simulation has resumed at the furthest point of that simulation, which is drone 0 is facing north and drone 1 is facing northeast. If by any chance the user does want to go back to turn 7, they are welcome to do so, and they can navigate backwards a bit, and we can go back to turn 7. And if they want to go all the way back to the very beginning of the simulation, they can do so. And they are able to then go ahead and continue the simulation at a later date. And as you guys can see, it will continue on running perfectly fine until the end of the simulation. So that is all. This is what Team 5 has developed for the Star Search simulation application. Thank you all for watching.